This is the other side of the Sunshine City. This is East LA, a 7-mile square area, an easy 10-minute ride from downtown. It's the home for more street gangs and more street gang-related violence than any neighborhood in any city in this country. What you are seeing is real life.
On the night of 17 February 1977, a farmer discovered a dead body on a rural road near the Sacramento airport. Later, the body would be identified as 35-year-old Ellen D'Elia of South Pasadena. She had been killed execution-style that very day. Authorities would surmise that Ellen was on her way to speak with state officials about her concerns that a street gang had infiltrated a community project she had started. What's more, a briefcase of documents supporting her claims was missing when her body was found. Within 3 days, SAC PD enlisted the help of Sergeant Robert Morrill of the Prison Gang Task Force, a task force made to surveil and combat major prison gangs, specifically the Nuestra family and the Mexican Mafia. The Mexican Mafia, or La M, spawned in 1957 as a youth prison gang with the vision of becoming the gang of all Chicano gangs. They modeled themselves after the Sicilian Mafia and recruited the most violent thugs from different gangs. Swearing a blood oath bound them for life and made them a carnal, or brother. La M spread through both youth and adult prisons and dominated the prison system from 57 to the mid-60s before the emergence of the Aryan Brotherhood, Black Guerrilla Family, and Nuestra Familia. By 72, the gang started to spill out onto the streets, where their main business was contract murder. They dabbled in extortion and drug running as well. By 77, La M still wasn't on the radar of law enforcement and was largely considered a myth. 77 was also a transitional period where Chicano gangs were taking over from the Sicilian mob in East LA. Word on the street was that the mob had passed a word in California prisons that the Nuestra Familia, comprised of rural Chicanos from Central California, and La M, comprised of urban South California Chicanos, could fight it out for control, and to the victor belonged the spoils. M had no structure hierarchy, while Nuestra Familia was run like an army. Regardless, it was speculated that La M was winning the war at the time, and between July 1975 and November 1977, MA enforcers claimed over 50 victims. In 77, 10 of these murders happened in East LA alone, and the locals were growing afraid to speak on the violence. Ironically, what would turn out to be the biggest racket for La M was right under Uncle Sam's nose. MA had grown an affinity for community projects, the kind dedicated to rehabilitation and curbing gang violence. At the time, about $40 million of California's annual budget was going into such programs, and it was a highly finessable $40 million at that. The state was desperate to have such programs to their credit, and there was little due diligence as to screening processes and applications of the funds. In the early 1970s, a bright and industrious Ellen D'Elia established Project Get Going in East LA to help people recover from addiction and help ex-cons transition back into society. Ellen had single-handedly secured funding for the project, a cool $1 million a year. It's unclear how they met, but Michael and Ellen D'Elia were married and ran the program together. Little is known of Michael's background, other than that he was a sworn MA, masquerading as an ex-con. He hired active MA members into the project with the blessing of MA godfather, Joe Pegleg Morgan. And for a while, Ellen had no idea. The gang would siphon methadone out of the clinics and sell it on the streets, use government-funded vehicles to move drugs and guns, levy a head tax for each patient they treated, pay salaries to ghost employees, and dart the records to get prisons to release gangsters into their care. The U.S. government was effectively bankrolling La M. Things became clear to Ellen at the start of 1977 when a get-going halfway house employee was found shot dead and another died of an overdose in the halfway house. Next, the assistant to a city councilman was also found murdered after he became aware of MA's influence in the program. Ellen made her suspicions and plans to expose the gang clear to Michael. She loaded up a briefcase with damning financial records and booked a meeting with state officials in Sacramento. Around the same time, Michael called fellow MA Alfie Sosa and verified that Ellen had to die. The next day, Michael drove Ellen to LAX. A year later, court testimony will reveal that Ellen had other business in Sacramento. Michael and Ellen were allegedly estranged, and Ellen had an entanglement with Alfie Sosa. Alfie promised to meet Ellen in Sacramento to rekindle their love affair and share some good coke. On the morning of February 17th, Eddie Gonzalez and Alfie Sosa picked Ellen up at Sacramento Airport. Earlier, both men had instructed Abraham and Juan Hernandez to spot a deserted site near the airport where Ellen could be killed and dumped. Eddie and Alfie had also developed an elaborate ruse to distract Ellen. As soon as they picked her up at the airport, Alfie started coughing hard, common and frequent coke users. The cough got worse as they left the airport and drove along the empty road. When they reached the designated murder spot, the cough got even worse, and Alfie signaled Eddie to pull over to the side of the road. Alfie got out and bent over a roadside ditch as if he were vomiting. "You'd better help your boyfriend," Eddie suggested to Ellen, "before the cops spot us and start hassling us." Ellen got out of the rental car and joined Alfie at the side of the road. When she leaned over his shoulder to help him, Alfie grabbed Ellen and jammed the barrel of his gun under her right ear in the back of her skull. After the discovery of Ellen's body and initial investigation, police initiated surveillance of the D'Elia residence. On the night of February 20th, Michael D'Elia, Alfie Sosa, and Armando Varela were stopped in a 1975 Oldsmobile. A search revealed a .38 caliber under the car's front seat. It was later revealed to be Ellen's murder weapon. Armando was subject to prolonged questioning for 5 days and denied access to an attorney. He eventually flipped on Eddie Gonzalez. Eddie would then make a deal with the authorities and became the highest-ranking inmate to turn state evidence. It was revealed that Michael and company had gotten off to a murderous start in 1977. Between January 15th and February 18th, they killed Robert Lewis, who reportedly had borrowed money from D'Elia to finance his failing construction company. He was found shot to death in his parked car in the Echo Park area in January 1977. Isidro Trujillo was also shot through the head. Was discovered the following month near Lancaster in a shallow grave on property owned by D'Elia's uncle. Lastly, they took out Ellen on February 17th. However, the case was hurt by the revelations that the random traffic stop that nabbed him wasn't random at all, and that it was a classic example of illegal search and seizure. Ironically, Michael was stopped by his cousin Joseph D'Elia, who called a plainclothes Sergeant Morrow from the prison gang task force as backup. The bogus traffic stop and illegal police conduct at the station jeopardized the prosecution of Mexican Mafia leaders all over California. Regardless, in 1982, Alfie Sosa got a life term for Ellen's murder. He also confessed to killing 7 people. In March 1984, Michael was sentenced to 5 years to life for 3 murders. Eddie Gonzalez went into witness protection. After, there were widespread audits of Project Get Going and other local programs, and the perfect hustle was compromised. The trial for Ellen's brutal murder effectively announced the Mexican Mafia and their ways to the country. Irregardless of her good spirit, Ellen's naivete and poor choice in men took fatal effect, because as for Michael, whether his intentions with her had been pure or not, he was bound for life the day he took that blood oath. The gang took precedence over everything in his life, and Ellen's decision to tell put him in a near impossible position. It was her or the both of them. Feel free to suggest a story you want to see using the link in the description. Also, 19XX is on Patreon with a tier for ad and sponsor-free content. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn your notifications on for future videos.